Welcome to another episode of the Founders Lounge. I am Peta Ellis and I'm really excited to chat with one of my really good friends and a fellow entrepreneur, Eleanor Carey. We will chat with Eleanor for the next 45 minutes, understand her background, her history, how she started her businesses, some of the interesting adventures that she's taken all around the world, and unpack what she's actually doing now and how she got to be there. So I hope you enjoy this episode of my chat with Eleanor Carey, a dual world record holder, speaker, and writer. So today in our episode of the Founders Lounge, we have one of my very good friends and a very special guest, Eleanor Carey, who is a dual world record holder, speaker and writer. Eleanor, thank you for coming on and having a little chat with me. We've got so much to cover and I cannot wait to share what you have done, but also most importantly, I think, talk about what you're going to be doing next.
Yes. It's an exciting time, and yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to chat.
Look, I think a good place to start is maybe back into maybe in the start. How did you even get involved in this wonderful world of entrepreneurship and business? Whether first of all, do you consider yourself an entrepreneur?
I don't love the word entrepreneur, but yeah, I guess yes, I do. It's probably my identity is that has probably been settling in more, I think, as time has gone along. It's probably certainly not something I would have been able to identify with at the beginning of the journey. And how I got into business in the first place. So I had a career as a physiotherapist. Mm-hmm. And I got really bored and I got really sick of it. And I just thought there has to be more to life than this, showing up at the same job every day, same day in, day out. And I think I was really just craving something where, I didn't have to dread a Monday morning, and it could be something, I really craved the autonomy. I really craved being able to be in the driver's seat and be in control and have some level of creativity. And of course, all of those things are a double-edged sword once you actually get into it. But yeah, that's exactly what I was
sounds
craving.
Amazing from the outside, doesn't it? Until you start.
It does until, every single one of those things, they really present its own set of very unique and difficult challenges. So I got into business. I opened an innovation hub in Bundaberg, so about 4 hours north of Brisbane. And so that was my very first business. I went into business with two friends, and it was, and they were both more experienced in business than me. So one of them, Dan, he'd had a social media business for maybe 6 or 7 years. Rael had her own. So she was a lawyer that she had her own practice. And I was the one who was completely brand new, that was sort of very much following along their lead and in their footsteps. But I had this really strong vision for the business of what I wanted it to be. And that it had this really strong feeling that, I wanted to help and support first-time founders, even though it's kind of insane.
Can we just go back a step?
So I was a first-time founder myself.
But that's what I'm interested in. 1 minute you are a physiotherapist, and then you decide you want to do something different. So instead of just starting a business, you decided to start a business that helped other businesses. So how did you jump from I want to not do physiotherapy every day to a whole hub with other people?
Yes. So I got there via, there's many different steps along the process. A small step along the process was I spent 3 months cycling solo across Europe.
Okay.
That then led me to a whole raft of possibilities. I was living in England. I moved home to Australia. I then took a month. I was just doing contract work as a physio. I took a month off to go and it was like a startup kind of course over in Bali in a space over there. And that was, so I basically went in there, not with a lot of specific ideas. I went with some specific ideas of what I wanted to work on. But then the thing that really stood out to me was that place and the community and the energy and the drive and the support and all of those things that place was able to provide, and all of the people that was able to attract. Yes. And I felt very at home in that community. I was like, these are people, they want something more out of life. They're driven, they have energy.
Yes.
And so it was very much that I wanted to recreate that environment, because in Bundaberg, where I was living at the time, nothing existed like that. There was the Chamber of Commerce, but, quite traditional businesses. And they weren't necessarily the people that I felt were sort of like me, I suppose. So I really wanted to attract those people similar to who I'd met in Bali, which is sort of that's how it really came to life.
But Bali and Bundaberg are just a little bit different. Did you find?
Well, yes, different, but also like we were really running off the fact that we knew that those people
there was a gap
within that
there was
community. There was a gap, and there are always those people around. There are always people that you can connect really deeply with. We did have a little bit of a philosophy of build it and they will come, which that is flawed. That is extremely flawed. Do not do that. But hey, you live and you learn, and you build and you learn. And sometimes it doesn't go quite the way that you think it's going to go, which is an extremely common experience.
It is. And look, I think anybody could have told you when you're starting out all the things to do and not to do, but I don't believe there's the greater learning other than stepping in and doing it and finding out as you go. So you started with some co-founders, which might not have even been a term that you were aware of at the time until you were in the thick of it. And then obviously you ended up with it on your own. I'm sure there's a lot of story there. Probably don't need to go into it.
Yeah, like through various circumstances of life, which, look, this is the thing. When you start things with people, life happens. And sometimes the thing that was, everyone's highest priority at a certain point, or maybe it was never the highest priority, but if we maybe didn't have those conversations as clearly as we could have. But yeah, life comes along and it gets in the way, and it doesn't always go the way that you think it was going to go. So yeah, I thought that I was going to be in this business with my two co-founders, really as playing more of a sort of supportive role. And then I think it was about 5 or 6 months in, even after we opened the doors. And yeah, I was really through various circumstances running it solo, which certainly was not what I had signed up for, but I learned a lot through it. And really, it was really tough, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Far better than a business degree.
I agree. So what do you do when things get hard like that? Did you have a support network, or did you have good advisors around you? How did you actually navigate what to do next, or did you know what you were meant to be doing? What was your resource? What was your sort of go-to to reach out and get help? Maybe not help is the right word, but maybe a little bit of support in that tricky time. Was there anything?
Looking back now, I certainly had support networks around me. I think probably I know now what I actually needed at the time was probably some really good therapy that I wasn't in at the time. That has ultimately it's coming full circle back around into the work that I'm doing now. But there were different, mentors in Brisbane, I didn't really know you at the time, but then you became a great support, as did a lot of other people around the sort of startup ecosystem. So yeah, certainly I guess once you get into any area, no matter what it is, you then inevitably meet more people that are in that area that hopefully you can build the relationships with them, to be able to go to them and ask them questions, when things get really hard and get really tough. So yeah, but look, very much I was muddling through. I was crying a lot. I was not super emotionally stable. It really wasn't. It wasn't a fantastic time, I'll be totally honest.
So definitely, most people say you got to jump in the deep end. I think you definitely went deep and you jumped. Yes. So how do you actually recover from something like that? Obviously, it came to an end at some point. You made the decision that it was time for you to do something different. What did you do then? How did you get to that decision making?
Yeah, so 18 months after I'd started the business, I got in a small boat and rowed across the Pacific Ocean with two other women. So we spent 62 days at sea, rowing from California to Hawaii, even though I'd never been at sea before. And the mere fact that I was willing to go and put myself in the middle of the ocean with no previous ocean faring experience, I think really speaks to my mental state almost at the time, that was sort of a preferable situation to put myself in compared to the really tough sort of business situation and other emotional state that I was in. So look, that
how did you make that decision? Were you at work one day and just thought, I need to get out of here, I need to do something different? Or had it been an underlying burning desire to do something really significant like that? How did you actually get to that point of making the decision?
It was inspired by watching this documentary, that I then just jumped on and started Googling for ocean rowing cruise straight after. I guess ever since that, the first long distance cycling journey that I did, I had been developing this sort of appetite for adventure. And the cycling journey, I was cycling for a couple of months. It was like, 3,000 kilometers or something like that. And it was an adventure, sure, but it was still on land. I could stay in hotels when I wanted to. There's food and there's people, and you can stop if you want to. Yep. Going from that to being in the middle of the ocean, two extremely different levels.
With people that you don't know until you arrive.
Don't know, with internet strangers, effectively. But yeah, look, through that whole process, I gained I had a lot of time at sea to then be able to reflect on, the business and how I was feeling and what was happening. And I knew that it was time to get out of that business. So once I finished the ocean rowing journey and I went home, I then went about
did you pick up some accolades along the way, or was it just a little row across the ocean?
It was a little row. We happened to set 2 Guinness World Records. That was.
So hang on a minute. You were in business. You needed to do something else. You found an opportunity online to join a team, which was it was a last minute call up. You joined the team. You rowed across the ocean. All three of you broke 2 world records, can you explain what they are?
So we were the youngest crew of 3 to row any ocean in the world, and we were the first crew of 3, male or female, to row the Pacific Ocean.
Amazing. So you got off the boat, you have 2 world records under your belt, and you thought, I can't go back into that business anymore.
Yeah, I just knew that it was time for, I had learnt so much. I also knew that the business, there were some really, severe limitations just of that business model in general. And I sort of ended up feeling like I was in quite a state of sort of helplessness. I felt like no matter what marketing I was trying to do, I just felt like I could never really get, we had, really high overheads and things like that. So it really wasn't working that well. And I was kind of turning a blind eye to the finances, I think, in the lead up. I knew that the situation, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't fantastic, that's for sure. And I think out there in the middle of the ocean, I was like, look, I need to be really honest about this situation. And, and I think I knew that there wasn't really a lot that I could do to be able to build it into the business that I really wanted it to be. And there were a lot of just limitations to do with the particular type of business that was. And after that, really, I vowed to myself that I never wanted to own a business that had physical premises again.
Yeah.
And that I really wanted to move more into the digital online, location independent space to get a lot of the benefits, from running that kind of business. Learned a lot of lessons.
Probably more about yourself.
What I didn't want, about myself. And it's one way to do it, that's for sure.
And so what did you do? You come back, what did you do next?
So after the ocean rowing adventure, I started doing some speaking work. And I started sort of doing some speaking work maybe at the beginning of 2019.
Was that just driven out of you personally wanted to share the stuff that you had gone through, or share the journey, or were you getting asked to do some speaking? So how does that come about? How do you become a speaker?
A combination of all of the above. It was it probably sounds funny to say, but when I was in the middle of the ocean, again, people probably think that I'm insane, but that's fine. I can totally deal with people thinking that I'm insane. But I almost feel like the mechanisms through which I was supposed to work, they arrived to me in the middle of the ocean. And it basically said, Eleanor, you are supposed to speak and you are supposed to write. And those are the 2 things that you are on this earth to do. And it sounds bizarre, but it just really arrived very, very, very strongly. And so I didn't come back then from the journey knowing, inherently, I guess, how to then build those particular skills out into a business or into being able to make money. And that certainly took a bit of time to be able to start earning money off of them. But I guess that was it was a clue that had arrived, and then it's sort of probably
some more clarity to what you could be doing with the knowledge or acquired skills that you have. And obviously now knowing that, when you've come back, how did you sort of structure your life to move towards that, let's say like a calling or a little bit more of an affiliation to something that feels more comfortable for you?
Yeah, like it, like one of the things that once I finished the ocean rowing journey, and after I finished the cycling journey as well, like I had this really strong urge of wanting to share some of those things that I learned from people. So I really sort of honed in on the purpose of that. Because look, if you looked at my written qualifications or how fit I was or how strong I was, I certainly wasn't the person that, quote unquote, should have been out there doing that. And it's just like, right, this is really a mindset thing and a chasing opportunities thing and an empowering people thing. And I just had this really strong sense of being able to go out there and help that messaging, I guess, arrive home for people. So yeah, the talk content, the keynote content, it's gone through a number of iterations over the years. Look, COVID made it very difficult. So 2020 was really when I was really trying to ramp up that speaking work. And then basically, the whole speaking industry really like shut down for a little bit, just due to the nature of in-person events not happening for a long time. And really, I'm kind of only picking that back up now in terms of really trying to build it out and scale it up and ramp it up. So yeah, it's been a journey, and it's still a journey.
And even as a speaker, because lots of people, well, first of all, lots of people are petrified and couldn't think of anything worse than public speaking. Other people would maybe like to get into speaking or wonder if they've got something to share, or how do you even go about it? Did you do any sort of formal training, or did you just start speaking, or did you get some coaching, or how did you sort of hone your skills, or was it a matter of just trial and error?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I'd done, bits and pieces of speaking, I guess, while I had the business. I'd done a couple of just really quite informal things that were just off the back of the cycling journey. So I guess I'd already done very little bits and pieces that were quite, they might have been 15, 20 minutes, not paid, before the ocean rowing journey. And now I was like, okay, I've sort of this now ocean rowing journey, I guess, enables me to, have something else that's a bit more tangible to be able to go out there and speak to. And so, yeah, it was just sort of speaking to people that I knew. Other people then will recommend you after they've heard you speak. So then it sort of has a certain sort of knock-on effect. I did do some work with the coach for a while. And yeah, there's lots of, speaker trainers out there. Mm-hmm. And so, but I would also take some of that with a grain of salt sometimes as well, about, choosing those people carefully, choosing those people wisely, making sure that you are at the right stage to be able to make that investment. So it's certainly not something that I would recommend for people to go and do straight off the bat. Like, I wouldn't say that's the first place to go to. You can go and learn a lot and do a lot of trial and error just in and of yourself before maybe making to go and make that decision, I suppose.
How do you ask for people? Like, I mean, obviously it's confronting, sort of reaching out and saying, look, how do you actually get the gigs? How do you find out where they are? How did you find out opportunities to speak? Like you said, there are a few things that came up, but obviously there must be a level of push if you want to make this a viable thing. How do you make sure that you're sort of covering bases and really being active?
People need to know that you speak first and foremost. People need to know that you are open and available to that kind of thing. So even if it isn't something that you've done a lot of, then when people do have an event, so initially, especially when, I wasn't doing a huge amount of marketing or anything like that, it would more be a call up that usually came through, it would come through a friend or it would come through a colleague, and they would say, oh, I know Eleanor, she's done this rowing adventure. She speaks about this, she speaks about that. And then as time goes on, you figure out the messaging and the titles that resonate with people more. So one of my signature keynotes now is Stepping into the Unknown. Yes. And the title of that talk actually was framed back to me by a client in terms of, how did that title arrive? And I think before that I was calling it Why Row an Ocean or something like that. So it's quite a bit of experimentation. But yeah, so it's like, you've got to let your family and friends and colleagues and people in your life, you need to let them know that you are speaking, that you are available. Yeah. And that's the first thing, because if nobody knows that that's a thing that you do, then, you're just a billboard in the desert and no one's ever going to give you the call up.
And I think, look, that would have to be true for all businesses, right? So whether you're starting a consultancy firm or you now do copywriting for somebody, or you could be doing design, or maybe you want to be have a social media agency, you've got to be able to share among your closest friends and contacts what you are doing now. Yes. And a lot of people do hesitate putting themselves out there because it can be a bit daunting. Did you ever find it daunting putting yourself out there?
Oh, 100%. And I'm 100% certain that there will be people out there that I have known across whether it's from school, whether it's from uni, whether it's from, I don't know, people that I've worked with before, that are like, oh my God, I can't believe that, Eleanor is out there, doing or that she's pushing herself like that. But also then the thing that you realize is nobody else is actually thinking about you. So it's just a trick that we play on ourselves, that we think that other people actually care what we're doing, but they really don't at all. No. So that is a trick of our minds that we need to get over. And if anything,
they would be, the truth is they actually would be admiring the fact that you can put yourself out there, because it's one of those things that we tend to judge and pick on things that we would much rather be doing ourselves, but maybe we don't feel that we can. So we've gone from physiotherapist to wanting a career change, to embarking on something that ended up being not something you want to do after all, but you gave it a crack, rode an ocean, came back, having a few life epiphanies, stepped into the speaking world, and then the information that arrived to you out in the ocean was to speak and to write. So how are you fulfilling the writing part of your life, and are you flipping that into some sort of educational content? Can you talk us through how you've arrived to this next piece?
Yes. So the writing is something I had also been doing, a certain level of writing even before I went on the ocean rowing journey. So I wrote a book about the cycling journey. It isn't particularly amazing, but I'm really pleased with myself that I went through that process. That was also something that came out of that Bali co-working experience that I had. So even that as a skill, I had been practicing that, but I was publishing. So I published every single chapter of that book as a blog, but I didn't tell anybody that the website existed. So I was
one of those, I was doing it, but nobody knew I was doing it kind of situation.
Exactly. So I was like tricking myself and saying, oh, well, it's on the internet and it's technically available for people to find, but I wasn't telling anybody that it was there.
Yes.
And so
then I'm sure there's quite a few secret publishers who are publishing stuff and not telling anyone about it, but they're kind of thinking, well, it's out there, and if they find it, they find it.
Yeah, but I think that also still has merit and it still has value. And I think we have to allow ourselves the time to be able to put in the reps sometimes of building a skill. I think the sooner we can push ourselves to publish things and build in public and publish things to our social media channels and things like that to let people know that they exist, I do think that is, better. But in the initial instance, if we need to just practice whatever the skill is for a little bit in our own independence first, you're still doing something, you're still practicing a skill. And then I think that helps build the foundation to then push the things out into public. Yes. So everything has been building. I now have an online publication on Substack called Post-Traumatic Growth Weekly. So I started that at the beginning of this year. So I think this week will mark the 12th edition or something like that. And every single week I'm reading a psychology book or something related to trauma or healing. And I'm writing a book summary and putting that out. So I'm still waiting to see, waiting isn't the right word. I'm letting it evolve, and I'm getting information back from the audience and finding out what things resonate. And I'm still figuring out exactly what that's going to turn into. I've just gotten 20 more subscribers overnight that I don't know where they came from. So look, I'm taking that as a sign that something must be going right or well, but all I'm really trying to focus on at this stage, I am trying to grow it, but at the same time, I'm focusing on getting these books read to give myself that foundational knowledge base. And I'm focusing on just making it the most high quality writing that I can, because then if you can provide something of value to people, then it will make the growth ultimately much easier. But yeah, I'm still pretty early in that stage.
So in terms of writing something, I mean, I think this is really helpful to know, because a lot of people probably don't understand that you could build something or a business or an income stream on the back of writing. And you've chosen a pathway of, let's just say, their weekly blogs or posts. You've put it on a platform called Substack, which is well set up to help would you call them micro publishers, or that blog people to monetize blogs? Because I know that platform in particular, They do have a podcast functionality as well. But a platform like Substack is actually designed for people like you to produce content on, but then also to build a community or build a list that you could monetize off. Is that what your aim is there, is to grow a community which you then charge for subscriptions, or what's the thinking there around the business model?
Yeah, so
potential options.
There's this is how Substack sort of functions and runs, and this is why I chose to build on that platform. So it's basically a cross between a website and an email list, something like MailChimp or something like that. And so every time you write a post, you put it in and it has all of the typefaces and sizes, and you can put in the images and things like that. And then
it's fairly easy to format. If you didn't really know, if you didn't have a great lot of experience and you think, I don't know how to design anything like that, would you say?
If you can use a Word document, you can use this. That's all you need. You can change the size of the headings and the titles, add the images in. It is ultra easy. You don't need any tech capabilities apart from just being able to navigate a website. And then it sends it out to your list, and then you get the statistics back around, how many people have opened it. There's a star rating against each subscriber, so you can tell who's opening what, who's clicking on what links. And so Substack, I think they take a cut of, I think it's 10%, and they only start taking that
if you've monetized it, as in
they only take a cut once you have monetized your newsletter. So you can build your list in perpetuity for a free list in perpetuity, and you won't have to pay Substack anything, which is one of the reasons that I chose it. And then, so I have turned on paid subscriptions. That was simply because I wanted access to certain features that you had to have paid subscriptions on. But then I got surprised because some people have actually paid for subscriptions already and haven't actually been pushing for it. So again, it's a signal something must be going somewhat right or well. My thinking is, and this is the way a lot of people build out, paid newsletters, is, you build it to a certain level of free subscribers. So let's say you might try and build to 3,000 free subscribers, and then you can switch on the paid function. Whether you try and convert all of those people over, you might then only post once a month to the free list, and then the paid subscribers might get a weekly post. There's lots of different models and things that you can use in terms of how do you make that a value add for the paid subscribers. So at the moment, I have paid subscriptions on, but I'm still really just trying to build out the free list until I figure out exactly what this is going to turn into. And
obviously your content dovetails into each other, the speaking content, the books, the type of books that you're writing about. So post-traumatic growth weekly, you're reviewing psychology books, or books, would you say they're psychology books? Or
yes, psychology. Yeah. So this is something I'm experimenting with at the moment. So on your Substack homepage, where you can get people to subscribe, you've got about, I think it might be 300 characters or something like that to be able to put the tagline. And it's something like, every week I read a trauma or healing related book so that you don't have to, and send a summary to your inbox every Friday. And I'm experimenting at the moment if trauma and healing books, or if it's psychology books that might be more, enticing to people. So there's lots of mini experiments to run in terms of that.
And so why is that an area of interest for you? I mean, you could be writing about anything. You could be writing about adventure. Yes. So you've obviously got a passion. So I'm trying to unpack why, because if somebody's thinking about writing or monetizing their writing, first of all, you've got to have a lot of dedication. You've got to have a good structure and routine. You've got to be able to write. So there's definitely things that you would have done to...
I would interject that you don't have to be able to write, but you have to be committed to the process of learning how to write. So even if you feel like you're no good, it still doesn't mean that you can't do it. It's practicing a craft. It's the same as like learning an instrument, learning anything. So don't let it stop you from starting to write, even if you think you can't write.
And did you practice the craft? Was there something that helped you practice the craft? Because committing to writing, I mean, how many words would your posts be per week?
They're 2,500 to 4,000 words a week.
Every single week. Now, obviously,
that's 3 or 4 hours to write. Yeah.
3 or 4 hours to write, but after reviewing and reading all week. So you're in a very good rhythm and routine, and that's a lot of commitment to do that. How do you structure everything to make sure that happens? Because that's something that's discipline.
So I would say it's partially, the grit of just showing up to that. Grit of showing up to that activity. So I've been writing in some way, shape or form since 2017. Yep. So it's been 5 years really that I've been practicing and honing this craft. So it's like some people from the outside looking in, they might think that this newsletter that I'm doing the 12th edition of, that this is the first iteration of writing that I've done. And I'm like absolutely killing it because I'm, putting something out every single week. Like honestly, me from 12 months ago would be so immensely impressed with the me now with the consistency.
Yes. You find it's getting easier, the rhythm of, obviously you've structured your week to make sure that you give yourself the time and the space and set up your environment right, your week, your even like your physical self to make sure you're in the right headspace. That's a commitment to do that. It's your job right now. Am I correct? Yes.
And that is, it is it's the priority really. Yeah. So I have Fridays set aside as a dedicated writing day. I have to try really hard not to book anything else on those days. The days if I do book meetings on that day, I always regret it because I just need the headspace to be able to do that. And then I have to be really disciplined with reading the book. So the book that I've chose this week is 500 pages. It's a behemoth. And so even this morning, like I sat down and I read for probably 3 hours this morning over multiple cups of coffee. And so, it's a lot of practice and it's a lot of discipline. So you also have to enjoy the activity. I think I find that the reading and the writing, it builds my energy. And this is a mistake that I've made before But
this is obviously going to tie into your interest. And this is what goes back to my original question. You've chosen an area of trauma, growth, post-traumatic growth, psychology, techniques, tools. So why is this an area of interest for you in particular? Why have you, because you could be writing about anything, right?
Yes, totally. So the reason why it's of such high importance to me, and, when I was mentioning earlier that, when I had the original business that I was finding it really difficult, that I should have been going to therapy, the truth of that matter was I was actually suffering from PTSD to do with an event that had happened about 10 years earlier that for a culmination of reasons was only expressing itself in its symptoms and in the triggers and emotionally, at that particular point, it was triggered by a lot of stuff to do with the business. The thing was, I thought that it was due to the business. And yes, there was a certain amount of stress that was to do with that, but it took me many years to be able to identify what was actually happening there. And so a lot of my work now has sort of turned towards the mental health realm, because to me, if I can help to bring this information to other people, so it's almost like I'm writing for myself from, 2017 and 2018. And this is a really good strategy if people are trying to figure out what to write about. Write for your own self. What you wish there was. 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that. And it's a really good cue to use. And so this area, it's something that I have been forced to do a lot of work on. It's something that I know that I can help other people with. And so, it's of high value, high interest to me. I know that this really matters to the readers in that community as well. So I think at the moment I've got 180 subscribers on that newsletter list.
That's amazing.
And I envision that group of people as sitting there if I get demotivated, or if I'm like, oh, I can't be asked reading this book, or I can't be asked writing this week. I envision
they're waiting for it
in a room. Yeah.
So where's my weekly newsletter from Eleanor? So it's almost like you've gone and created a reason to be committed, and you feel the need to show up for someone other than yourself, which is the external accountability, because often it's tiring we can be motivated and driven and disciplined, but it's really we need the external driver as well. And you've gone and created your own community for that.
And and it has, I think it's a mixture of both. I think if you 100% rely on internal or 100% rely on external, it can be difficult. I think the balance is different for everyone though too. So just because that's how I've found it to be successful, it doesn't mean that will necessarily be the recipe for someone else, but it's worth definitely experimenting with a lot of different models to figure out what works for you.
And so it sounds like you are somebody who absolutely runs a lot of experiments to test and try and come back and review. what would you say has probably been the biggest, well, there's quite a few probably things you've learned about yourself, but in terms of business or creating things, what would you say that you have learned about yourself that you find is really beneficial in business, like a personal trait? Is it that you are committed or consistent, or you are inquisitive or curious?
Oh, yeah, that's a hard question, actually. I think so. Look, I've done a lot of personality tests over the years, as you well know. And so look, I think all of those
Probably
things,
all of them. I don't know if there's one that you haven't done yet.
there's always more. There's always going to be more, I'm sure of it. But look, doing those different things and just getting to know yourself, your strengths, your preferences.
Yes.
And then I think if you can figure out a way to then engineer your business around those particular strengths and assets that you have and those things that you like to do. Look, you can't ever like to do everything to do with your business, but I think you need to like at least the majority of the stuff that you're doing.
Yes.
And look, this is certainly a mistake that I had made with, this is one of the reasons I left physio, was because I had to treat people all day, every day. And I actually get really drained by people. Yeah. And then I opened a business, which was, all about building community, and it was all about people. And I would get home at the end of the day and I was so drained and I was so tired. And now I built a business, which is, I get to read and I get to write and I get to sit here in this office, and it is my absolute bliss and heaven. And it's so hard.
I can see that when you talk about the two different things, it is just worlds apart of excitement.
Yes.
You light up. But also, so yes, you are constantly filling up internally, but then you get to have the moments of outward exchange where you speak to share and you write to share. And it seems to me like you may have just engineered the perfect environment for all of your skill sets, but also your personal interests. Do you think you'll always remain writing about the similar topic, or are you going to wait and see what evolves?
Oh, look, I would never say always, and I'd never say never. So look, yeah, I think it can always change. That's probably the constant. And I have a broad variety of interests, and I'm really fascinated to see, look, I can't wait to find out what it turns into as well. But yeah, I'm certainly I'm committed to this purpose and this cause, in terms of bringing this type of mental health information to other people and sort of democratizing it.
Yes.
And I think, the mechanism by which that can happen, I think will continue to evolve as time goes on. And look, down the track, I would certainly, like to be able to turn that into some type of a product-based business as well, which has the capacity to be able to bring in other bits and pieces of passive income. Making money while you sleep, of course, is always really appealing. But also you need to be in contact with your customers first and figure out what is of value to them first. Before you can go off and do that kind of thing. So look, a lot of this it's a lot of exploration. And I think some of those other answers, will continue to arrive as I keep exploring.
Yes. Awesome. Before we wrap up, I've just got a couple of questions, because you are somebody who has gone and done lots of interesting things. And I'm keen to find out, first of all, where in the world is it that you have been, your most favorite place in the world that you have traveled to? And then the second question is, what is the one place that you have not been to yet that is your ultimate bucket list?
Antarctica.
Antarctica. But so what sort of travel to Antarctica? Are we talking a particular mission that you've identified, or you just need to get there? You don't really care how?
Look, I need to set foot on it. That will be a certain level of satisfaction. Look, would I be open to a cross-country skiing expedition to the South Pole? Yes, I would be very interested in that. Yeah. If we're hoping to start having a family soon. So look, whether that is going to be conducive with going on an expedition to the South Pole.
Strap the baby on, cover it in lots of fur. I'm not sure Antarctica is maybe as baby friendly as some other places, but
we can explore the possibility as a man.
We can work around these things.
We can work around anything. Absolutely. And then the place that I've been in the world, which is my most favorite, is Tagazout in Morocco. So it's this teeny tiny little beach town, and I spent 6 months managing a surf hostel there. And I don't think it's so much the exact place. Like, it's this beautiful little beachside town, but there are many other beachside towns that are very similar to it. So I think it was more to do with the sense of freedom that I got to have while I was spending time in that physical location, as opposed to it being the exact physical location, and just being so free and so happy. And I was outside every day and I was surfing, and it was absolute bliss.
Amazing. And I'm just sitting here and I know you, and I'm trying to think, I don't know how you actually fit all of this in. So from the travel to the expedition to the businesses to now, you're only just beginning again, a whole other phase. And I admire what you've done. I love you as a person, you as a business person, but also just your enthusiasm to keep seeking more. I absolutely love that. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. And look, we know we've only just scraped on the surface. We've tried to fit it into 45 minutes and we've not really done that. But thank you. Thank you, Eleanor, for sharing those stories with me. And if anybody else wants to follow up with you, you have been on other people's podcasts. So if they were to search your name even into Spotify or somewhere, wherever you listen to podcasts, I'm sure you would have been a guest on many others talking about different things. But also to find you, where is the best place to look you up? And especially Post-Traumatic Growth Weekly. Where is that?
So if you go to posttraumaticgrowthweekly.substack.com, you'll find it there. I'm also on Twitter if you just search my name, and the link to the newsletter is in my bio. Same on Instagram. I'm Eleanor J. Carey over there. And there's also Post-Traumatic Growth Weekly on Instagram. So yeah, or eleanorcarey.com, and that's got some more info about my speaking.
I will include all these links anyway in the description and the show notes for this episode. So you will absolutely, I don't think you're hard to find, which is awesome. All right. Thank you. And we will talk to you later.
Thank you for having me. It's been fantastic.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion with Eleanor. We lost vision halfway through. It was all about Eleanor anyway, so we didn't really need to be seeing me. But thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed hearing Eleanor's story. I certainly did. Every time I listen to it, I learn so much more, and I'm always fascinated about the journeys that people take. We learned how she started one of the very first businesses, what that experience was for her, why she chose to do some of the things she did in taking on some very large challenges and tackling the world of adventure. She explained to us one of the latest programs and projects she's working on, which is Post-Traumatic Growth Weekly. And if you would like to connect with Eleanor and follow along in what she's writing and reviewing in the form of psychology books, and signing up to her newsletter and following her on some of the social media channels, we will share all of those links and details in the show notes of this episode. Thank you again for tuning into this week's episode of The Founders Lounge.